and welcome to the Cross and Crown Spotlight. My name is John Hill, and I have the privilege of being the President and CEO of Cross and Crown Organization. Thank you for tuning in today, and it is my great privilege to have my good friend and fellow pastor, Barry Stallings, with us. Barry has been a great friend for more than 20 years. We've known each other for a long time. We served in the same community. He's preached in my pulpits. I've preached in his, and then when I came to work at the press and in this new position, I got the chance to work with you in a different capacity. Barry is also the chairman of our board for our organization, so it's great that I get to see him on so many different occasions and in different lights. He's also the vice president of our convention of Original Free Will Baptists, just elected to that position, and so I'm proud of all the accomplishments that he's had. Barry, thank you for being here today, and maybe some of the folks that are watching haven't met you before. And so how about give us a little word about you, your family, and your church?
I appreciate all those accolades, John, although I will say this, that maybe I have all those titles, what have you, but you've got a lot to do yourself with us singing and being the head of the press and the in foreign missions and pastoring and whatever else you have to do. So God bless you for that. And good to be here on the podcast, and I'm excited about this as a not just as a guest, but also as a member of the press board.
Absolutely.
And because podcasting is where it's at these days. And so God bless you for that. But anyway, just to give you a little bit of background, I've been at Pleasant Grove Church in Pikeville now for December will be 23 years.
Right.
And my background is radio and television. I was in Christian radio back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Secular radio before that for a few years. Went into Christian television in 1992 and began hosting the Together Again television program, Together Again with Barry Stallings, Southern Gospel Music video program, which you may have sung on before when you were with...
a long time ago, yeah.
Absolutely. And that program is still on today. It's on Channel 43 out of Goldsboro. And also the church has a program on there called Pleasant News from the Grove. We record that at our church.
Yeah, cool.
But Pleasant Grove Church is doing really well. We've Caleb Hines, who you're real good friends with, just left us as our full-time youth pastor to go to pastor his home church up in Beargrass, and looking forward to being with him in revival in October. But God sent us three guys two were in our church, one was not, to become part-time to fill his position, and Gordon McGinnis, who's our connections minister, Carter Hudson, who is our middle and high school minister, and my son-in-law Austin Terrell is our little kids minister. At least that's what I call them, the little kids, you know.
Sure.
And so, and their youth team helps them out. So that's going really well. We've fixing to have Vacation Bible School July 26th through the 30th, which I'm sure there's other churches in our convention doing the same thing. And so I've been married for 34.5 years almost. Yeah. My wife Olivia, she was Olivia Fountain, raised at Bethlehem Church down in Duplin County, and we've got two daughters. Karen is I'm not going to say I can really have the liberty to say how old my kids are, but let's just say they're grown.
Just may not want everybody to know, right?
That's right. Yeah. They're grown. Karen's our oldest, and she's married to Austin. I mentioned him a while ago, and they've got two awesome boys who are I think they've got me right there around their pinky. Absolutely. Yeah, right. Carter's 5 and Camden's fixing to turn 2 in October.
Yeah.
And so, and then Katie, our youngest daughter, she is a preschool teacher at Faith Christian Academy in Goldsboro. Yeah. And her boyfriend is Zach Blackburn, and Zach is a fantastic musician. He has his own piano business. He plays. He's a minister of music over at St. Paul Methodist in Goldsboro.
Oh yeah.
His grandparents, Ronnie and Carolyn Azale. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I remember those names.
Yeah, they've had a singing group as well.
Yeah.
And I say again, a catering business too. And so he's grown up around music, very talented. And so that's what's going on with our family. And
that's great.
And so we're staying busy.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Barry, you've had a wonderful family, and I've appreciated getting to know them through the years. years, and what you were saying about my friend Caleb, and then bringing on those other staff. It's always good when if you were a minister, you step out and they've got to hire 3 people to fill your spot.
Yeah.
That's a really great thing. So I'm glad to hear that.
And Caleb was part of that vision, so I feel pretty good about that.
That's awesome. Maybe we'll have him on one day. I hope,
there you go.
We can work that out for you. Well, one of the reasons we wanted to have you on today is to talk a little bit about the books that you've written. You've written several with us, most of which you've done prior to joining our board, of course. And this wonderful story about a woman named Esther. Mm-hmm. And she did such a great job with that initial book. And little did we realize that Esther was going to become such a hit among so many readers. And so when we first went live with the book, we sort of wondered, it was like, well, is this going to find traction? And I don't know how many we've sold, but it has been a ton of them. I believe it was The Christmas Gift for Esther, I believe was the first of those books. How about tell us a little bit about Esther? And
I want to say too, John, just prior to you coming to the press, Rick Watson was the administrator, and I think I'm getting that right. You were editor. You were actually in the editing.
That's right.
And I appreciate Rick and Darren's patience with me through the first book, because I wrote it at the end of 2018 with it. But actually, sometimes, and Lisa might agree with this as well, the story that you write comes from here.
That's right.
From your heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like a sermon.
Sure.
You're a pastor, so I'm talking about preacher. The sermon's already ready here, and then just whenever you write it down, it takes just maybe a few minutes, whatever. But that's how it was with that particular book.
Right.
And I wrote it all down in a week. And it's based on a lot of ministry experience.
Sure.
2 ladies told me that one lady up in Raleigh who's read the series, she said that she felt like that there's a little bit of Esther in all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we've all had pains and hurts and that kind of thing. And she was a lonely lady. But there was one thing particular in her life that she had never dealt with, a pain that she had never dealt with, that she had to face. And I don't know how much I should talk here. I don't know who's read the book and who's not. But anyway, that somebody appears to her in a dream.
Sure.
And some people say, well, does God give dreams? I believe God gives dreams for a purpose.
He does in Scripture, sure.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And He foretells, that'll happen as well. So anyway, and sends her somebody a dream to help guide her way back to where she needs to be.
Yeah.
And I remember when I took this to Rick and to Darren, I actually had contacted another publishing company. They told me how many thousands of dollars they needed, and that they put it over in a bookstore in the Midwest. And I'm like, well, I don't know anybody in the Midwest that I know of.
Right.
I mean,
that's right.
And I'm like, you know what? God has given us a ministry in our own denomination.
Right.
I said, I'm going to them.
Right.
And so Rick and Darren were very, very gracious to step out by faith. I mean, they really did. And I'll never forget whenever they said, Darren even told me later on, he said, Barry, I don't mean to offend you or anything. And he said, but I was pleasantly surprised how well it did. I said, Darren, you're not offending me at all. That's actually a compliment as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And somebody mentioned that to me actually yesterday on the phone about that same comment. I said, I take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, I told them the vision, gave them a manuscript, and they went with it, hired a lady out of Wilson, who you know very well, to do the illustrations for the first book.
Yeah, Candace Blake.
Candace Blake, exactly right. I've never met her face to face, but we were friends on Facebook. But they told me how much it cost the press, and I remember Rick said, Barry, we might need to sell a few copies before you start seeing anything.
Sure.
And I said, well, I actually have it built up, so I took care of that, for them, which, that's what we do. But anyway, and so it was set. COVID really stopped us.
Sure it did.
I mean, our first event, Darren had it scheduled for the Sunday School Institute at UMO, and that was our first event for Esther when it was in the old blue cover.
Sure.
And some folks
first
may
edition.
still, first edition. And then it was about a year before we could really re-release it. Yeah. And but it took off, between the bookstore, Cross and Crown, and because that's the only place it was,
right?
And and some book signings events that I had back in Wayne County,
right,
and in various places. We really pushed it, and I never thought that a second book was coming. I thought really that was it.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I believe, and the second one for this for that series, of course, Esther's Christmas Wish. Out of those, I think that one kind of hit home for me personally. Because the whole time when I've been reading these, I guess when those of us that are pastors, I think you're exactly right about Esther. We've all had an Esther in our churches in one way or another. I mean, and I hadn't quite figured out who she is at the Friendship Church where I serve, but I know that there are so many that have the same kind of hurts, same challenges that are addressed even in the first book. And then after things began to work out for her, and then to move on even through the storyline for Esther. So tell us a little bit about her Christmas wish.
And I'll say this real quick, going back to something you just said, piggybacking on that real quick, and I will. That first book is a compilation, like you said, of people in church, but also my own parents.
Right.
And there's some phrases in there that my dad and I discussed because he couldn't understand ministry.
Sure.
And now they're both gone to be with Jesus, my mom and dad. But the second book, and this is how Esther appeared in a different way, it was Christmas 2020, COVID year. And we had Christmas candlelight communion at Pleasant Grove Church, and just a few days before Christmas. And this lady came in, actually, her hair looks a little bit like Esther's. Now, I'll say this, Esther has a bunch of hair in the first book. And, but anyway, so hers was a little bit shorter, but she had a cane, and she came in and she said, "Pastor Barry, come here." So I went back to where she was on the back pew, and I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, and she's now gone to be with the Lord, but she told me, she said, "My brother's coming tonight. Please pray that he will." And he was a backslidden pastor.
Wow.
And he showed up. Now, but before he showed up, I'm standing there listening to her, and God just spoke to my heart and said, "That's your next Esther." I'm like, "Lord, I didn't see this coming." He said, "Well, I didn't care. You work for me."
Right.
So
exactly.
So that's where Esther's Christmas Wish was born, and that took about a year to get done. But that book has a lot of emotion in it, and like you said, I think we can identify as pastors. And how Jacob was backslidden, Esther's brother, became a used car salesman, was living it up, as it were.
Right.
And he didn't know how Esther's life had developed.
Right.
And there's just a lot of emotion from the breakfast scene on Christmas Eve morning till the very end of the book with him. So her only Christmas wish, that's why it was Esther's Christmas wish, was for her brother to be restored at Christmas. She didn't want anything else but that.
We've all had a prodigal son or daughter or a family member, and I think this book really spoke to so many parents and family members that have that wayward individual that you pray for and you hope for, and you just beg God repeatedly to see that change and to see that person come back. And I think that's really hopeful to me and to other people, because I know I've lived it. I've had other family members, people in my church live it, and to know that that those prayers that we offer on behalf of those wayward, challenged individuals, backslid individuals, that the Lord hears those prayers and moves in those situations and brings them to restoration. And such a wonderful message.
And Esther 1, Christmas gift for Esther, didn't have the impact on me like the second one did.
Sure.
And I look back now and I'm like, well, when you have a series or a trilogy, whatever we thought was going to be a trilogy, until somebody came along, and I'll share that in a second. There's always got to be a front door. Christmas Gift for Esther was the front door to where God was going to lead the second one. And to me, there's a lot of emotional impact in that one. We've done a play for both of those. Matter of fact, Caleb Hines, who we were just talking about, played Jacob in the second play, and he did a great job. He brought a sort of a persona about Jacob that I didn't really hear when I was writing the book, but he was hilarious. I mean, and especially whenever he said, whenever he and Esther were arguing, and he said, "What have you been putting in your eggnog?" Or something like that, and or you've been drinking too much eggnog. I'm sorry. And so But anyway, so I think that one had a huge emotional impact.
Absolutely. So the third one that we that you came up with, again, you kind of thought this was going to be the trilogy. Esther's Christmas Blessing came out just a few years ago, and that also has fallen on some. And of course, you can tell that as you developed as a writer, just the thickness of the books, because the first one. It's still a very expanded story, but you could tell that as you kind of got the swing of things, developing the story is really cool. So tell us about Esther's Christmas Blessing.
Esther's Christmas Blessing, to be honest with you, John, I don't know. It came from the Lord.
Yeah.
There was not really any particular inspiration from church or anything. It was just I just sat down and started writing, and it starts out with Esther spending Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And let me give credit to my daughter Katie. She helped me with the second book with the wording, and because she said, "Daddy, she's a UNC Wilmington. We've talked about her before.
Yeah,
and she sort of restructured, gave Esther's home an address, 223 Church Street, Pinetown, Indiana, and." So anyway, that book, I guess, just inspired me from a perspective. Esther, what's next for Esther?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe she needs a companion.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So she goes to Atlanta for Thanksgiving, and to her daughter Stella's house, son-in-law Dan, who's a pastor at Riverview Church down that way. And when I made up, there's not a Riverview Church in Atlanta. I Googled it. If there is, and his family's down there, and her grandson Danny, and Danny actually was inspired by my grandson Carter.
Right. Okay.
And so anyway, at the Sunday table. Well, excuse me. Let me back up just a second, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. But they go to church Thanksgiving Sunday, and Esther's in the congregation, and she looks up, and Dan has a man on his staff, an elderly man. Well, I say elderly man. I'll say an older man.
Yeah, right. A vintage man.
Vintage
right.
man. There you go. With an Irish accent, and so she says she talks to Betty, who was Dan's mother, about, hey, that's an unusual sounding guy. She said he must not be from, he ain't from Pinetown,
right? That's ain't from around here.
He ain't from around here. And so, anyway, she also meets a lady named Lady Constance Culpepper, who's a really snooty British lady.
I love that name, really.
And she actually has an eye out for this man.
Sure.
His name is Alton Carter McBride. Now, Carter's my grandson.
Right.
But and Camden wasn't born yet. But now, as you know, you probably already know the fourth book's dedicated to my youngest grandson.
Correct.
But Alton actually came, and Becky Glover at our church.
I do. Mama Becky.
Mama Becky, yes. Her daddy's name was Alton, and he loved Ireland. And he loved St. Patrick's Day. And so I took that name with her permission, and I said, I'm going to call him Alton Carter McBride. Some people may call him, and McBride's just an Irish surname,
Sure.
So some people might call him Al, I don't know. But anyway, so after church, she ends up, Sunday lunch, and all of Dan's folks are coming over and everything, and they're having fried chicken. I figured that was a good one since we all love that.
Yeah.
And everything. So they start coming in, and Betty says, "Oh my goodness, my guests are coming." And Esther's in the kitchen. She says, "You go see your company. I'll get these." And she's bringing out the biscuits. And when she does, boom, Alton is sitting at the table that she didn't expect.
There's the man. Yeah,
and her eyes are glued to him just like that. Well, Stella picks up on it, her daughter, and Betty does too. Now, Betty loves to talk. And, and one thing that's in that book that I think is funny is when they go back into the kitchen and Betty says, "So, Esther, what do you think?" She says, "Think about what?"
Right.
About Alton.
What about him?
Yeah, what about him? That's right. And she goes, he's single, you're single.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think God's trying to tell you something?
Sure.
She said, "Yep. God's telling me that this conversation's over."
Right.
And they walk out. But and that's abbreviating it. But anyway, in this book, the Christmas Blessing is meeting Alton, but she's really running from it because she still feels that she has got to be loyal to her late husband Richard, who died 14 or 16 years prior, and I'm sure that and she has another dream in this one,
right.
and that sort of sets her free from that to remind her of some things.
Sure.
I think, John, in our daily walk with Christ, even as pastors, we have to be reminded of some of the basic things that that are simple in our walk with the Lord, and Esther has to be reminded of that book.
And the thing about dreams is that I believe that sometimes God tells us stuff in dreams because we're too busy running our mouth when we're awake. To hear what God has to say to us. So maybe when you're asleep and your mouth is shut, God can finally speak to you.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to get my point across to you
one way or the other. Yeah. Right.
So, somebody might say, well, what happens at the end of that book? Mm-hmm. If they've read it, they know. If they haven't read it, they don't know. And but there's Esther 4.
Yes.
So, and both of those characters are in it.
So we move on to Esther 4. And so, you came to my office one day and we were talking about another book that you're working on and thinking about, but I didn't realize we were going to have that conversation, and I was like, we can't be done with Esther yet.
I mean, Esther, if you read the back of Esther 3, it's like, my goodness, hey, it ended at a great point.
Right.
And then John looks at me and says, well, doesn't Esther have to go to heaven sometime?
Right.
I went, well, did you really have to say that? And now, then going down the road, all of a sudden, I start thinking, and I start getting inspired.
Sure.
And probably don't remember everything. The things that are in the book, probably I didn't remember everything, but there's a lot of things you can do while you're on a lawnmower and riding down the road.
Absolutely.
And that's praying and get inspiration. Mark Bishop.
Sure.
Mark Bishop says he writes a lot of his songs when he's riding down the road.
That's right. A lot of sermons are done behind the wheel of a car or whatever.
That's right.
And the thing about Esther in this particular story is, because so many of us, when we get towards the end of our life, and we're in those final years, and we know we have so much more behind us than we do in front of us, we start to go through a natural life review, and we start to ask ourselves, okay, well, did I do anything that was meaningful? Did I interact with anybody? Did I leave a legacy? That kind of thing. And so when I look at this fourth book, there's a touch of that certainly is present with Esther, and I think it challenges all of us to ask what kind of legacy we leave.
Well, exactly right. It's called Esther's Christmas Miracle. Mm-hmm. This has a subtitle, A Heart in Two Places.
Right.
And that title just came to my heart because of what's in the book. Now, nobody's read it except you, probably.
That's correct.
And so because I asked you to edit, that's all right. I did. I sure did. And not only that, but since I said, John, since you're the inspiration of this book, before I even wrote one word, I said, you can write the foreword to this book.
Yeah, I was so excited.
And yes, I could tell. And so I appreciate you doing that. And it sounds good too. It really does. Well. But September 19th, we'll be releasing that book at Pleasant Grove Church.
That's great.
There's already folks that have wanted to pre-order. I'm a little nervous about that because I don't want to hold somebody's money without them getting the product, if you know what I'm saying.
I do understand. understand. So without getting I know, we don't want to go too much in over time, but so with the conclusion of Esther series, we know that we think, unless I come up with another idea for you, I'll work on that.
How about Esther's podcast?
Esther's podcast. We'll have Esther come on and interview people.
That's
right. So you're working on a new project. This is still in the developmental stage, and I haven't read anything other than what you've said, what we've discussed. But God's Fire Girl is a new concept of a new product line, a new set of works. And so give us a little bit about that.
Well, I've always been a superhero type guy.
Sure.
Except, after getting saved, I sort of, I didn't really, and of course, when we were younger, they didn't have the movies that they have out now and that kind of stuff. But it really wasn't based on any of the secular ones. There's this young lady back in Pikeville. She is actually a Presbyterian girl, but she would post things on her Instagram story and that kind of thing. And let me just say this, if I can, real quick, that God uses everybody.
Sure.
And I'm thankful for good, godly men and women who are inspired by God.
I understand.
To write and inspire us and that kind of thing. One of the greatest speakers I think I've ever heard was Ann Graham Lotz at the NRB. Franklin and Billy said that she was better than they were. When she gets to heaven, Franklin and her, they can debate with their daddy about that.
That's right.
But anyway, she was just throwing scriptures out there on her story and that kind of thing. And I said, boy, you're spitting fire. And she calls them her God nuggets. And so I started calling her God's Fire Girl.
Perfect.
And matter of fact, she sent me her several months later. She said, look, I've got a new email address, and it had God's Fire Girl or God's Fire Girl in it or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, wow. And so, but it took about 3 or 4 years. Everything is done in God's timing, and I know that.
That's right.
But I didn't have any inspiration to really write anything. And then the first of this year, it just hit. And the manuscript is finished. And that kind of thing. It'll be after Esther 4 before I submit it to you guys, so that we can do one project at a time. You know.
Right.
And she her name is Lily Campbell, and she needs Jesus. And a friend of hers named Ella. They're on a college campus. They're college students. Invites her to a youth rally or an event there on campus, and I sort of got that vision, I think, John, from Velocity and some of the things we've seen in our denomination.
Yes, sure.
You know, at UMO and the great work that Matt Sharp's doing at UMO with and winning
He's
people
phenomenal.
to Jesus.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Lily eventually does give her heart to the Lord, and I'm going to go to a certain part and I'm going to stop. But she's reading scripture one night, she and Ella, and this may sound a little weird, I don't know, but then again, maybe it doesn't, because how many times do we read the Word of God and feel a burning in our heart?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But she reads Zechariah 4:6, not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord.
Amen.
And all of a sudden, she feels a heat on her. And one night, she's praying by herself in her room. She does that, steps out to her back porch, and she transforms into God's Fire Girl.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, some people are going to think I'm nuts, but that's
Maybe.
okay. That's all right.
Right.
But anyway, we hadn't seen anything like that, I guess, since Bible Man. I
Sure.
don't know. And so, but who are her enemies? The same ones that are ours.
Absolutely.
The spirit of fear,
Right.
the spirit of anger, the spirit of lust, the spirit, I could go on, and you could too.
Sure.
I'm sure we could
Absolutely.
preach a 2 weeks revival on it.
Absolutely.
And so her first villain that she comes up against is the spirit of anger, who's got a name. His name is Fury.
Yes. And
when I made a picture of him, he was this huge cloud. And I'm like, well, he don't need to look like that. So, AI's good with some things. And so you're able to say, could you make him into a formidable villain that looks like a villain? Yeah. And so it did, and you'll see that in a few months. But so what happens with that? Well, you'll have to stay tuned for that.
That's right.
And there is a cliffhanger at the end of that goes into the next one.
That's awesome.
So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'm really looking forward to reading it, and I know when it comes across my desk, that.
And let me say this too: one lady has already told me that she hopes God's Fire Girl will become a film. Esther 3 is being considered for a movie with two different.
That's right.
And Great American, I've been talking to them for a year and a half, and they said, please let us know more as we go into next year. So we'll see.
Awesome.
But then my script writer in Idaho has talked to another film company. So, just whatever God's will is with that. If it doesn't, God's allowed me to meet some great people.
We're just looking forward to being a part of this huge process of everything that goes on.
If I go, y'all, Free Will Baptist Press is in the credits, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's our privilege.
Dr. John Hill, president.
No, I hope not. but no. The final thing, we won't necessarily get into details about it, but one of the other things that you put together was Walking by Faith, a practical guide for new believers, and I actually used this with a group from my church, just as sort of a group of new believers, new members, and just use that. And we have that available at the press, and it just sort of gives some talking points for our church members to figure out how to be new members and what's the new steps of even being a new Christian. And so it gave us a lot of good conversation there, and we have that available at the Free Will Baptist Press. Thank you all for tuning in to this presentation. It's our privilege to sit down with my good friend Barry Stallings. Pastor Barry, again, great friend, good writer, prolific writer, and I'm glad that he has submitted so many great things to us. We look forward to working with lots of writers. Maybe you're one of those people example, that you have an idea of a follow-up to something you've already written. Maybe it's an original idea, a series, things that promote Christian values and the purpose of encouraging other Christians. That's something that we want to talk to you about. So give us a call at the Free Will Baptist Press, Cross and Crown here in Ayden. Talk to Lisa Allen. She's our publication specialist, and we'll be glad to work out something for you so we can try to get things moving for you and to make that dream become a reality for you and to be able to put something on your shelf and to share the gospel in a lot of different capacities. Thank you for tuning in. My name's John Hill, and I look forward to seeing you next time.